I still remember the first time Marcus Dawson looked me dead in the eye and said, "Claire, you're not cut out for startups. You need something more stable." It was late afternoon in the glass-walled conference room at Innovate Now Ventures, the place I'd hoped would be my launchpad. The sun slanted through the Venetian blinds, painting stripes across his tailored navy suit. I'd just delivered my pitch, an AI-powered platform to connect regional artisans with urban consumers through pop-up markets and micro-deliveries. And I thought I'd nailed the emotional hook. Slides showed smiling potters, charts projected revenue growth, and I closed with a story about the grandmother whose handcrafted scarves sold out in hours. Instead of nodding, Marcus clicked his pen and leaned forward. "Look, I love your enthusiasm, and your numbers aren't terrible. But startups are brutal. They require something extra: grit, relentless hustle, a taste for pivoting at 2 a.m. I'm sorry, but you strike me as the kind of person who values weekends off, real work, life balance, not startup chaos." My jaw fell open. I'd stammered. "I have the grit. I worked from 6 a.m. to midnight last year helping that local cafe chain build their loyalty app." He shook his head, brows furrowed. "That's different. That's a job. This is your own company, your own bread and butter. It's a bet on yourself, and I don't see the hunger." The microphone of my own ambition felt heavy in my hand. I sank into the chair opposite him, notes fluttering to the floor like wounded birds. "So you're saying I should give up?" "Not give up," he said, folding his hands. "Find something that plays to your strengths. You're smart, articulate. You'd be great in corporate strategy or product management. But leading a startup? I don't see it." That evening, I sat alone on the subway bench, the city rushing past, my heart beating in my throat. I'd devoted months to this idea, recruiting initial vendors, building a rudimentary prototype, validating market interest in 3 small pilot events. I believed it could scale, that it could transform local commerce. But Marcus's words echoed, "Not cut out for startups." My phone buzzed, a calendar invite, TEDx Harbor Lights. Speaker rehearsal, 7 p.m. My talk, Beyond the Pivot. Why Empathy is Your Secret Startup Weapon, was scheduled in 3 weeks. I'd applied on a whim, drawn by the chance to craft a narrative about the human side of tech. Now, as I sat beneath the fluorescent station lights, I realized something: if I couldn't convince a room full of venture capitalists, maybe I could still reach people through storytelling. That night, I rehearsed in front of the bathroom mirror, pacing on the tiles, reciting my opening. When I launched my first pop-up market with zero budget, I didn't know what I was doing. But I knew one thing: if I treated every artisan like a partner, not a contractor, they'd show up for me when it counted. I practiced my pauses, my inflection, even my hand gestures, imagining an audience leaning in. Over the next 3 weeks, I juggled final pitch rehearsals at Innovate Now with TEDx coaching sessions. Every morning, I'd run through market size calculations for my startup. Every evening, I'd refine my story arc: introduction, conflict, breakthrough, universal insight. June, my roommate and fellow entrepreneur, helped me storyboard visuals, choosing images of colorful textiles and candid vendor snapshots. Meanwhile, the incubator team at Innovate Now kept deferring my funding decision. Marcus's doubts seemed to hang over the process like a storm cloud. I polished the financial model, argued the revenue projections, even spun off a new freemium feature to entice early adopters. But the final verdict never came. In meetings, he'd nod politely, but remain unmoved. Then came the night of my TEDx talk. The hall buzzed with neon backlit triangles and camera crews. I paced backstage, heart pounding. When my name was called, I stepped onto the lighted stage, took a deep breath, and launched into my story. Good evening. I'm Emily Carter, founder of Local Loop, a platform connecting small batch artisans with city shoppers. Tonight, I want to share why empathy, not disruption, is the real engine of innovation. I told the tale of that first pop-up in a dusty park, where the baker forgot her cash box, and I learned to meet her panic with calm problem-solving. I spoke of the potter whose kiln failed, and how I helped her rearrange her schedule to salvage her customers' orders. I described negotiating with city officials in rain-slick streets, armed with homemade cookies and a grin, simply because I saw them as individuals, not gatekeepers. As I moved through the narrative, the audience leaned in. I felt the energy shift. I closed with a call to action. If you want to build a startup that lasts, don't just chase metrics, chase human stories. When you lead with empathy, you ignite loyalty that no algorithm can replicate. The applause was thunderous. I stood, breathless, soaking in the ovation, tears in my eyes. Off stage, June hugged me so tight she nearly snapped my ribs. 2 days later, Innovate Now called me back in. I walked into the same glass-walled conference room, heart thudding. Marcus sat at the head of the table, flanked by two new partners. I braced for the usual polite dismissal. Instead, he offered a rare, genuine smile. Emily, we saw your TEDx talk. Everyone's been sharing it around the office. Very powerful. He tapped a laptop. I watched it myself. His eyes softened. You were right. Empathy is a competitive advantage. My throat tightened. Was this a change of heart or empty flattery? I nodded, forcing a smile. That said, he continued, leaning forward, we've been reevaluating how we approach founder profiles. We need more than just a scrappy coder. We need the ability to connect, to inspire. Your talk convinced us you have that. I blinked. So, you want to fund Localoop? He clicked to the slide behind him, our pitch deck, shimmering on the projector. Yes, we'd like to lead your seed round $500,000 for 10% equity. You have 6 months to hit your pilot targets in 3 new cities. The room erupted in applause, partners nodding eagerly, an associate already sketching cap table updates. Marcus reached out and shook my hand. Congratulations, Emily. Welcome to the portfolio. My hands shook. This was the moment I'd chased for months. And yet, as elated as I also felt the weight of responsibility. I'd proven Marcus wrong. I'd shown him I was startup material. But now the real work began. Building from the spark of empathy into a thriving business, scaling operations, managing expectations, and keeping true to the human stories at my core. That evening, as I celebrated with June over overpriced sushi, my phone buzzed with a calendar invite. Verdant Vibes product launch. Marcus Dawson keynote. Verdant Vibes was the fintech platform Marcus had founded before Innovate Now, his personal success story. He'd sold it for 7 figures and built his reputation on data-driven growth hacks, not warm, fuzzy narratives. I tapped accept, intrigued. On launch day, I arrived at the sleek event space downtown. Ambient lighting, projection screens, Verdant Vibes logos everywhere. A jazz trio riffed softly as industry execs mingled. I sipped a coconut water and watched the stage crew finalize their setups. Then the opening video rolled, pulsating neon graphics, upbeat electronica. When Marcus strode on stage in a tailored black suit, the crowd erupted. He waved, took the mic, and began, "Thank you for joining us today. Before I introduce our new product, I want to share a quote that changed my perspective on business." The house lights dimmed, and a single spotlight illuminated him. My heart hammered. Could it be? As Emily Carter said in her TEDx talk, he continued, "Empathy is the competitive advantage your data can't buy." Stunned, I felt a ripple through the audience. Cameras swung to me, industry reporters, fellow founders, and I realized they were waiting for my reaction. The room's energy shifted. This was no cursory nod. He'd credited my words on his platform launch stage. He smiled, then clicked a remote. The screen flashed my TEDx slide, a photo of me on stage and the quote beneath, "Empathy is the competitive advantage your data can't buy." Then he dove into the product demo, showing how Verdant Vibes' new analytics suite integrated customer stories and sentiment tracking, honoring the human side of commerce. As the crowd applauded, I sat back, stunned and gleaming. That moment felt like the full circle. The boy who said I wasn't startup material, reduced to rolling eyes in a chemistry lab, was now quoting me at his own product launch. The world had shifted. My mind reels with possibilities. The skeptic turned champion. The forgotten girl, now a guiding voice. The product that emerges from this, a fusion of data and empathy, is something I never imagined. Part 2 will explore the fallout. Building genuine collaborations with Marcus, scaling Localoop's growth with augmented customer empathy, and navigating the delicate balance of partnership with someone who once doubted me. For now, I sit in the back row, plate of hors d'oeuvres abandoned in my lap, absorbing the applause echoing through the grand hall. My heart pulses, not with vindication, but with the thrill of what's next, because if empathy can turn skeptics into evangelists, then there's no limit to the stories we can build, the connections we can forge, and the impact we can share. And that story continues beyond the launch stage, into the living rooms and marketplaces of artisans and consumers alike, woven by every heartfelt conversation and guided by every authentic human connection. When the applause finally subsided at the Verdant Vibes launch, I walked off stage and straight into Marcus's arms. And for a heartbeat, all the years between that chemistry class humiliation and this glowing moment seemed to collapse. He looked at me, really looked, eyes bright. "Emily," he said, voice low amid the after-party din. I meant every word. I nodded, heat rising. "I heard you." That night, over late-batch hors d'oeuvres and jazz at an adjacent lounge, Marcus and I sat elbow to elbow. He toasted me, my words, my vision, and I realized how much had changed. The ambitious girl who once folded herself into boardrooms now had a champion at the helm of one of tech's most watched platforms. But with that privilege came new challenges, fresh stakes. Part 2 begins here, as we transform a product launch soundbite into a lasting partnership, scale a marketplace built on empathy, and navigate the delicate alchemy of business and heart. 1. From curtains to corridors, building trust behind the scenes. Monday morning, the Verdant Vibes office hummed with post-launch energy, merchandising updates, spike alerts on the quote merch page, and a lineup of media requests. I slipped into Marcus's corner office, now shared by our joint steering team, and found him poring over analytics dashboards. "My quote shirt sold 10,000 units last night." He grinned, scrolling through real-time sales maps. North America, Europe, even some in Japan. I exhaled, both proud and daunted. "That's incredible. But we need sustainable growth. How are we handling order fulfillment and quality control?" He nodded, immediately switching screens to supply chain metrics, on-time shipping rates, return complaints, batch defect percentages. "I've got ops on a late call. We'll pivot suppliers if defect rate stays above 2%. I leaned in. "And intellectual property. Some small creators are upset your merch used their phrases once. I've drafted a simple licensing framework, lightweight, transparent, for any future quote partnerships." He raised an eyebrow. "So you're building the governance layer?" I smiled. "Exactly. Empathy isn't just a marketing slogan. It has to show up in how we treat collaborators and customers." That first week, we held daily touchpoints, morning stand-ups with ops, creative review with design, legal huddles on IP guidelines, marketing scrums on community outreach. Marcus and I co-chaired each, weaving empathy checkpoints into every agenda. How will this affect creators? What's the customer's emotional response? Are we listening to feedback? By Friday, the entire team had adopted our empathy audit checklist, an unorthodox practice in a data-driven environment, but one that rapidly improved vendor relations and reduced refund requests. 2. Scaling Local Loop. Merging two visions parallel to Verdant Vibes, my own startup. Local Loop was gearing up for its series A pitch, thanks in no small part to Marcus's investment interest. We'd closed $500K seed and validated our model in 3 cities. Now we needed $5 million to expand nationwide and build a mobile app. Marcus took an advisory role, flying in for our pitch rehearsal. In the high-ceilinged co-working space downtown, we ran through slides on market size, unit economics, and competitive moat. Then, in the founder's values slide, I included empathy as moat, with case studies of artisans who'd chosen Local Loop over marketplaces because we treated them as partners. He paused the deck and looked at me. "This is gold. We'll put that at the front for VCs. It makes you different." I nodded. "Our edge isn't just tech, it's relationships." The pitch went well. We secured $6.2 million from a syndicate led by Innovate Now and several micro VCs known for social impact investing. Marcus congratulated me afterward. "You turned that seed of doubt into a flourishing orchard." I grinned, thinking how far we'd both come from skeptic and overlooked speaker to co-creators of 2 brands built on human connection. 3. The pop-up tour, bringing empathy to the streets with funding secured. Local Loop and Verdant Vibes co-sponsored a week of pop-up markets in 5 cities: New York, Chicago, Austin, San Francisco, and Miami. Each market featured local artisans using the Local Loop app, alongside a Verdant Vibes booth selling my quote shirts. We called it the Empathy Tour, an interactive celebration of creativity, commerce, and community. At each stop, we hosted Empathy Hour panels, local entrepreneurs sharing challenges, moderated by me, and branded Empathy Tees giveaways at Marcus's booth, shirts with rotating local-themed quotes I'd penned specifically for the tour. On stage at SXSW in Austin, I watched a line of 200 people queue to share their own favorite sayings on blank T-sheets at our customization station. In Miami, a craftsman told me, "Eyes shining because you listened." I left my Etsy shop and rejoined Local Loop. And in New York, an attendee pulled me aside, tears in her eyes, saying, "Your TEDx line changed my life. Empathy is the advantage data can't buy." I start my new nonprofit next week because of that. Each evening, Marcus and I debriefed over tacos or sushi, mapping out the next day's schedule and iterating on pop-up logistics. The synergy between our ventures, his merch amplifying my platform, my events driving traffic to his site, became a living case study in collaborative empathy. We published the tour's impact report: 5,000 artisans engaged, $150K in direct sales, 30% vendor retention for Local Loop, and a 40% repeat purchase rate for Verdant Vibes. 4. Navigating conflict, when empathy is tested, but no story is without friction. Halfway through the tour in Chicago, a major city newspaper published a scathing piece, "Empathy Tour or Self-Promotional Circus." The author accused us of exploiting small businesses for PR, questioned our sincerity, and mocked the idea of empathy as a tech buzzword. The piece went viral among local Twitter circles. Headlines ranged from "Fluffy BS from Silicon Valley" to "Would you wear your therapist's" quotes. My inbox filled with angry tweets from artisans fearing exploitation, and Marcus's DMs pinged with investors asking if empathy was just a PR gimmick. We convened an emergency Zoom with our core team and community advisory board, 5 artisans from different cities, recruited to give feedback. Over 2 hours, they voiced concerns: confusing fees, lack of transparency on revenue splits, uneven product quality at pop-up stops. They felt their stories had been used like marketing slogans. Marcus and I listened, truly listened, as one by one, board members recounted their frustrations. No defensiveness, just pen and paper. When the session ended, I exhaled with relief. "Thank you," I said, "for holding us to account." Marcus nodded, voice steady. "We'll pause the tour, address every issue, and come back stronger." Within 48 hours, we posted our apology. "We heard you. We pledge to refund any fees, improve our communications, and establish a transparent artisan profit share portal by next week. The tour continues only when we've earned your trust." We offered free shirts to every artisan and donated 10% of Verdant Vibes profits to the local Small Business Alliance. We restructured Local Loop's fee model to a flat, sliding scale with clear dashboards. We reopened the tour under a banner of genuine co-creation. The backlash subsided. In fact, many admired our willingness to admit mistakes. Press coverage turned from criticism to cautious praise, an unlikely story of tech humility. When Silicon Valley says sorry and means it. 5. From headlines to heartlines, cementing a mission. By the end of the Empathy Tour, we had a playbook: how to build a brand on genuine partnership, how to course correct when empathy slips into marketing speak, and how to co-author a vision that transcends buzzwords. Verdant Vibes rolled out a permanent heartprint collection, a line of my original quotes printed alongside artisan stories inside hem tags. Local Loop launched Empathy API, enabling other platforms to integrate real-time vendor feedback into their user interfaces. Our combined revenues soared. Local Loop reached $2 million ARR, Verdant Vibes doubled its annual revenue, and our net promoter scores climbed into the high 80s. But more importantly, our community thrived. Artisans reported 50% higher year-over-year incomes, and customers raved about apparel that felt owned by people, not platforms. 6. Co-founders beyond labels. 2 years after that fateful chemistry class dismissal, Marcus and I sat in the boardroom of our joint enterprise, now officially branded Heartprint Collective, housing both ventures under one roof. We exchanged glances over the quarterly impact report, a 40-page document packed with data charts, artisan testimonials, and carbon-neutral shipping metrics. He smiled across the table. "You know," he said, tapping the document, "I was wrong about you. You weren't the type to fold under pressure. You were the pressure valve." I laughed, heartful. "And you weren't too corporate for empathy. You were just waiting to believe in it." He covered my hand with his. "To the next chapter?" I nodded. "To building businesses that matter and the people who make them unforgettable." Years from now, when someone stumbles on a Verdant Vibes tee or clicks the Local Loop app to support a new artisan, they won't remember that Emily Carter was once deemed not startup material. They'll remember how a skeptic became a believer, how one TEDx quote sparked a movement, and how 2 unlikely partners built an empire on the simple yet profound principle: empathy is an advantage worth fighting for.